On today's episode, we're going to talk about American film and television and even books and how aspects need to change in order to be relevant to a different audience. In this case, Germans. Obviously not everything translates, but today I'm going to list some of your favorite American films and shows and even books and show what was changed in order to make them more approachable for German audiences. Hello, Lieblings, I'm Mari, science fiction and fantasy author who's been living in southern Germany since 2014. Today we're going to talk about American media and how it is literally everywhere here in Germany. Whether that's a good or bad thing is a matter of perspective, but I do find it interesting watching, say, The Big Bang Theory in German and trying to point out what nuances had to be changed because, let's face it, not everything translates. In my years here in Germany, I have noticed some changes that have surprised me, but it makes sense for the most part. The last one on my list requires a lot of mental gymnastics, but we'll get to that. But before we get started, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell if you haven't already. Here on Adventures of Lamati, we talk about writing, living abroad, and everything in between. So let's get to that list. Number 1 is The Simpsons. First, I have to applaud the team in charge of bringing The Simpsons to Germany. It is actually one of the shows I can watch in either German or English and still find it funny. They've also done a really great job trying to get the voices to be pretty similar. I mean, granted, the actor who does Homer is obviously like the only big difference, but I mean, he's still funny. I mean, that's the important thing, right? But that's not what got changed. Udo was changed. Do you remember Udo? He was the German foreign exchange student in Springfield whose sole purpose was to be a moving German stereotype. Naturally, that doesn't work in Germany. So what did they do? They made him Swiss. Down to the hardcore speaking of Schweizerdeutsch, or Swiss German. And suddenly the jokes still work. I mean, hearing him scream, "Don't make me run, I'm full of chocolate," is just as funny in Swiss German as it is in English, so bravo, guys. Bravo.
Hey, come here, you butterball.
Don't make me run. I'm full of chocolate.
Komm her, du Sahnebutter-Hupfdohle.
Jag mich nicht, ich will nicht laufen. Ich bin voll mit Schoki.
Number 2 on my list is Die Hard, or the German title Stirb langsam. First, I have to say, it's not Die Slowly, guys. It's Die Hard, and this is the hill I will die on. If you haven't seen the movie in English, the bad guys are actually German terrorists from the fictitious radical West German Volksfrei movement. Naturally, this makes no effing sense for Germans, so the terrorists were given English names. Hans Gruber, played by the perfect Alan Rickman, became Jack Gruber. And all those terrorist names that McClane writes on his arm are also English names. I mean, you can't blame Germans for changing that. There is no cultural reason to keep the bad guys German when you want a movie to appeal to German audiences. Unlike the States, where all of our bad guys are either Arabic, Russian, or still German. I'm looking at you, The Boys Season 2. Number 3 is Moana. When I first heard about Moana, it was from my very Disney-centric friends back home in the States, including the ones who actually work at Disney. And then, of course, I saw the first posters here in Germany, and suddenly the name was Vaiana. What? So around Europe, you will actually see this same movie, but with like different titles. And there's different reasons for that. Like, first off, the name Moana is already a trademark name in Spain, as well as a few other countries, including Germany. So they couldn't use it. They had to actually change the character's name entirely. And here's the real kicker. I actually watched this film both in German and in English, and her name is Vaiana in both versions. Though I think part of it has to do because I was watching it on Disney Plus in Germany, so I think it's wild that I can still watch it in the original language and they still keep the European version of the name. I was like expecting to hear her being called Moana, but no, still Vaiana. So granted, I usually talk about US versus Germany, but I had to talk about Italy because Italy's version for changing is pretty interesting. So you see, in Italy, Moana is the name of a very, very well-known porn star, Moana Pozzi. So you can imagine, for SEO purposes and for the sake of concerned Italian parents everywhere, the movie was called Oceana or Oceania or something in order to avoid confusion with the porn star who passed away in 1994. Imagine your kid doing that Google search. So, like with those three, those changes, they made perfect sense. Like I said, you can't do a one-to-one translation from one language to another. Like when you're looking at it from a cultural standpoint, these changes make perfect sense. And honestly, like I would say 95% of these changes is, you know, reasons like that, and it makes sense. And, you know, you do what you got to do to appeal. But my next one here is, it's a doozy. Granted, the reasons for changing the original text to what it was changed to is a very, very outdated version. Outdated reason. But, I mean, they could have rectified it, but they didn't really do it. And that, my friends, is Little Women. All right, you know, I was wrong about the whole Die Hard thing. This is the hill I will die on, all right? The German title, first off. The German title of Little Women is Betty und ihr Schwestern. Betty and her sisters. When I first discovered this, I was super confused. Like, who the hell is Betty? I mean, there's Beth, but she dies. So I had to do some digging. So there are numerous translations of Little Women, but the first version with the title Betty und ihr Schwestern was from Inge M. Artel in 1959. It was at this time that English was not so prevalent in German culture like today, so Inge wanted to make the book more approachable to German audiences. So it was eingedeutscht, or Germanized. So this is actually a really common phenomenon even today in Germany. Books, movies, TV shows in Germany kind of get over-translated to literally make everything as German as possible. And a perfect example of this is in George R. R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire. We have Theon Greyjoy become Theon Graufreud, or even Jon Snow becoming Jon Schnee. But I will agree, like the whole bastard system, how the last names are, okay, fine, you know, that is like a cultural significance, and okay, I will concede for the bastard last name system, but you don't translate last names, folks. Like, if the last name is Miller, you keep it Miller, you don't turn it to Müller, just, you know. But you do find that here in Germany. I say that because I am a translator myself, and I've talked to other translators, and it is very much a German thing. So this system was then used to translate Little Women. So this is going to require some crazy, crazy mental gymnastics, so bear with me, folks. All right, so if you're unaware of the story, it's about 4 sisters during the American Civil War, written by Louisa May Alcott. The book is semi-biographical, with the second sister, Jo, or Josephine, kind of being a placeholder for Alcott herself. The 4 sisters are, in chronological order, Meg, Jo, Beth, and Amy. Inge felt that these names were not German enough, so they were changed. Betty, Jo, Marguerite, and Amelie. Do you notice the problem? Yeah, Beth and Meg, their names were switched. I'm not really sure why. First off, like, the original names are nicknames. So Meg is short for Margaret, Jo is short for Josephine, Beth, Elizabeth, Amelie, Amy, yeah, okay, fine, whatever. Through Inge's translation, the story is then technically about Meg and her sisters. But everyone who has read the novel, outside of Inge, knows that Jo is the main character. And also, last time I checked, Margaret, Josephine, and Elizabeth were common names in Germany. So, in essence, the problem was the nicknames. Or maybe the fact that Inge didn't know or just didn't care about the source material. I don't know, it's kind of feel like she shat on it with this. But if that were the case, it would have made more sense to Germanize the nicknames. So make Meg, Greta, Beth, Betty, which, you know, we'll get into. So anyway, fast forward to 1994 and the utterly perfect film adaptation of Little Women, starring Winona Ryder and Susan Sarandon. Here, the girls have their original names, except for Beth, who is now Betty. And the film is still called Betty und ihr Schwestern, because that's how Germany knew this. So now the story is about Beth and her sisters. But Beth dies. And the movie still focuses on Jo. I mean, like I said, they kept the name because that's the title the Germans were familiar with. But I feel like this And they did try to rectify it, you know, by giving them the original names. But then apparently some people were very confused about why would the movie be about one of the dead sisters who spends most of her time on the sideline from the other sisters and then dies. Like, so if you've ever wondered about that title, that's why. It's really crazy, right? I don't even want to touch on the fact that Darling Inge removed 2 full chapters when she translated it. Ugh, this guts me. This guts me. And I take this so much to heart because Little Women was one of my favorites since I was a kid. Especially because I've always seen myself as Joe, the writer. Hell, I wanted to be Joe so badly, I went out and found a German who was willing to marry me. No, he proposed. I mean, also, he's like a programmer and not a philosophy professor, but details. Anyway, like I said before, I find the process of bringing films and shows and books to different countries to be super fascinating because while the stories at their most basic level are quite universal, sometimes those details aren't and they have to be adapted. Or sometimes they completely miss the mark, like with Little Women, but other times it brings a whole new and refreshing experience, like watching The Simpsons in German. And what about you? Have you noticed this little difference in some of your favorite media that was translated into a different language? Let me know in the comments below. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and give this video a thumbs up. It lets me and YouTube know you like content like this and you want to see more. Please leave me a comment if you have any questions or if there's a certain topic you'd like to see on this channel. My space fantasy, The God Queen, is available in ebook, paperback, and hardback. I have all the links in the description below, including the first 6 chapters when you sign up for my newsletter. And don't forget to connect with me on social media, whether it is through Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And that's it. Until next time, ade!